Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short Story 601, A Quiet Vocation, Words with a Silent S, Intermediate. A story incorporating words which are pronounced with a silent S. Arthur lived a life of quiet order. As an archivist, his days were spent preserving fragments of history, forgotten letters, and leather-bound journals. His latest project had taken him on a pilgrimage from his home in England to the heart of America, in search of a journal by a famous botanist. The last known location of the journal was a small town in northern Illinois. He arrived in the town, which was still recovering from a recent flood. The streets were lined with soggy furniture and broken belongings. He visited the town's small, community-run museum, which was housed in what looked like a former library. A friendly woman directed him down a long, dark aisle towards the local history section. Among the dusty books, he found a faded photograph of the botanist's family, taken in front of a modest house. On the back, in faint pencil, were the words, "From our home in Arkansas." The trail had just gone cold. Dejected, Arthur left the museum. He was about to give up when he noticed a small, hand-painted sign for an antique shop tucked away on a side street. He decided to try his luck one last time. Inside, a kind elderly woman was sorting through a pile of old maps. He showed her the photograph. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "That's my great-grandfather," she said, her voice soft with memory. They traveled a lot before they settled here. A lot of their belongings were in a storage truck when they moved, and it went off the road near the lake. We salvaged what we could, but most of it was lost. She pointed to a map hanging on the wall. The truck went down that road, and a lot of the things floated across to that small island in the center of the lake. We called it the Lost Things Island as children. With new hope, Arthur thanked her and found a boat. He rowed across the still water to the tiny, overgrown piece of land. It was a chaotic tangle of reeds and scattered items, old metal signs, a child's broken bicycle, and chunks of wood. He began to search, carefully sifting through the debris. He moved slowly and deliberately, his archivist's patience guiding him. After nearly an hour, he saw it. Tucked beneath the roots of an old tree was a small, leather-bound book, its cover water-stained but intact. He pulled it out and wiped away the mud. On the front, etched in gold, were the initials he was looking for. He opened the journal and smiled. The pages were a little damp, but the ink was still legible. His long journey was finally at an end. Vocabulary notes. Archivist. An archivist is a person who collects and preserves historical documents and records. In the story, Arthur is an archivist, and his job is to find and protect important pieces of the past, like the botanist's journal. Example: Arthur lived a life of quiet order. As an archivist, his days were spent preserving fragments of history, forgotten letters, and leather-bound journals. Similar words: historian, curator, librarian, collector. Pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is a journey to a special or meaningful place. While it often has a religious meaning, it can also describe any long journey taken with a specific purpose, as in the story. Example: his latest project had taken him on a pilgrimage from his home in England to the heart of America. Similar words: quest, expedition, journey, voyage. Dejected. The word dejected describes feeling sad and without hope. Arthur feels this way after his initial search for the journal is unsuccessful. Example: dejected, Arthur left the museum. He was about to give up when he noticed a small, hand-painted sign for an antique shop. Similar words: discouraged, disheartened, downhearted, despondent. Salvaged. To have salvaged something means to have rescued or recovered it from a wreck, fire, or other disaster. The antique shop owner explains that her family salvaged some items after the truck crash. Example: we salvaged what we could, but most of it was lost. Similar words: rescued, retrieved, recovered, reclaimed. Debris. Debris refers to scattered pieces of waste or rubbish after something has been destroyed. In the story, Arthur has to search through the debris on the island to find the journal. It can also describe natural material that has been left behind, like after a storm or flood. Example: he began to search, carefully sifting through the debris. Similar words: rubble, wreckage, detritus, junk. Story written by Gemini Pro AI. Image created by 1minute.ai. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, drifting at 432 Hz, unicorn heads.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're following an archivist, or what starts as a quiet quest, but believe me, becomes a pretty epic adventure. It's a search for a lost journal that leads him thousands of miles from home, all the way to an island of lost things. So, our story kicks off with a man on a very singular mission, a quest that has already taken him thousands of miles from everything and everyone he knows. Let's meet Arthur. His entire world, is built on structure and history. But his search for one specific piece of the past is about to pull him way out of his comfort zone and into the unknown. Arthur's life is really defined by this idea of quiet order. He's methodical, he's patient, and he's just deeply, deeply dedicated to his work. But what is that work exactly? Well, he's an archivist, basically a professional preserver of history, and his current obsession, finding the lost field journal of a celebrated botanist. It's this fragile piece of the past that he's convinced holds all these untold secrets. And this search, for him, has become his own personal pilgrimage. You see, it's not just a trip, it's a deeply meaningful journey. And it's taken him all the way from England to a small, kind of forgotten town in Illinois. But after traveling clear across an ocean, Arthur's very carefully planned quest just hits a wall. The trail he's been following for so long, it goes completely cold. So he gets there, and the town itself is in total disarray, still recovering from a recent flood. He goes to this tiny local museum, and the only clue he finds, a family photo, actually points him in the wrong direction entirely. He's not just in the wrong town, he might be in the wrong state. So yeah, after a journey of thousands of miles, he's hit a total dead end. The one and only clue he finds tells him he's in completely the wrong place. And you can just imagine, the weight of that realization is just crushing. Arthur feels completely dejected. I mean, think about that feeling for a second. You're sad, you're disheartened, and you feel like there's not a single flicker of hope left. His entire journey suddenly feels like a fool's errand. But just as he's about to pack it in and head home, this small, hand-painted sign for an antique shop catches his eye. He figures, what have I got to lose, and decides to give it one last shot. So could this dusty old shop really hold the key to his entire quest? Or is this just another false hope on a long, long road? And then, in this incredible stroke of serendipity, the shop's elderly owner recognizes the man in the photograph. It's her great-grandfather. The connection he was desperately searching for was right here, in this town, all along. She starts telling him this story from decades ago. When her family moved, their storage truck actually went off the road and right into the nearby lake. They only salvaged what they could from the accident, but most of it was lost. And then, here comes the real turning point. She tells him that a lot of the lost items, carried by the current, ended up floating to this small island that the local kids all call Lost Things Island. So now, with his hope just completely renewed, Arthur gets himself a boat and rows out to this tiny, overgrown island for one final desperate search. And this is where Arthur's true nature as an archivist just completely takes over. He's faced with chaos, right? But he doesn't panic. He imposes order. He creates this careful, methodical plan to sift through all the years of neglect. He starts to carefully carefully search through all the debris that litters the island. We're talking old signs, a broken bicycle, waterlogged wood, and just all sorts of junk that's washed ashore over the years.
And then, after an hour of his patient searching, he finds it. Tucked safely beneath the roots of a tree is the water-stained but still intact journal. His quest is a success.
So, Arthur's journey was this amazing collision of order and chaos, of hope and despair. Let's do a quick recap and trace the arc of his quest through the words that really defined it.
Okay, so it all began with a dedicated archivist, a man who lives a life of quiet order,
Who then embarked on this really meaningful pilgrimage, taking him thousands of miles from home.
He was left feeling completely dejected when his only clue led him straight to a dead end.
Until a story about items salvaged from a wreck gave him this brand new spark of hope, which finally led him to sift patiently through all that debris of the past to find his prize.
You know, Arthur's journey is such a great reminder that the most meaningful quests are often the quiet ones, the ones driven by patience and purpose. And it kind of leaves us with a question. What lost thing would be worth that kind of journey for you? What would be your pilgrimage?